KFI AM 640. It's later with Mo Kelly. Good evening. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. I'll be with you all the way until 10 o'clock, and then I'm going to dash out of here. I mean, literally dash, because I have to be right back here in the morning, Thursday morning, to fill in for Bill Handel, who's away getting married. Congratulations, Bill. So I'll be on the radio tonight from 7 to 10 p.m. Hopefully I'll get home by 11 p.m. Hopefully I'll be asleep by midnight, and then I'll be up by 3:30, 3:45 to get back in the car, to come back to the studio to do the Bill Handel Show, filling in for Bill. And I wouldn't have it any other way, because this is what I signed up for. But we have a tremendous show for you tonight. So much good stuff that we're going to cover. You know that we have been talking about crime in recent days, and also the crime stats and how we should feel about the crime stats, and how obviously the idea of safety plays into that. Well, next segment, we have to pick up with what has happened most recently on the Metro, or at least the Metro platform. A man has been stabbed, Universal City Metro platform. It kind of fits with what we've been talking about regarding crime and also our perception of safety. And hell, we haven't had a Metro update in quite some time, so it kind of fits. Then we got to talk about Rick Caruso, who is unofficially yet officially running for mayor. He hasn't formally announced, but every indication would seem that he is actually going to run for mayor again. But did you hear his latest interview with Alex Michelson on Fox 11? He, as in Rick Caruso, is of the opinion that we should not pursue the Karen Bass recall. Yes, Rick Caruso, who presumably would be the chief competition to Karen Bass in the next mayoral race, says we shouldn't waste the time. We shouldn't waste the money. Well, I'll let Rick tell you about it, and we'll do that at the bottom of the hour, talking about this recall effort against Karen Bass and why Rick Caruso does not support it. And I'm not a fan of roller coasters. You may not know that. I'm just not a fan, because I feel a little bit uncomfortable when I tell you about the Garden Grove family, which is suing Six Flags over the death of their son on the X2 roller coaster, and whether Magic Mountain was liable. Maybe you'll better understand where I'm coming from. Dodger baseball's here. The Dodgers are 2-0, sweeping the Cubs in Tokyo, Japan. And I'll tell you right now, I'm calling my shot for my final thought this evening. I'm going to have a longer, slower, and more deliberate conversation about Tesla and its connection to Elon Musk. We know about the protests. We know how the protests have transcended not only United States, but into Canada and other parts around the world. We know that Elon Musk is inextricably linked to Tesla, and the feelings about Elon Musk obviously are spilling over to Tesla. But who is really responsible for these protests? Is it just Democrats? Can we make that assumption? Or is it bigger than that? Or can we have a more nuanced conversation? So tonight, I'm going to close out the show talking about Tesla, Elon Musk, and who really needs to shoulder the blame, if there is any blame. We have a huge show tonight. It seems like this is perfect for Mo Kelly. We got Metro, we got Rick Caruso, Karen Bass, Magic Mountain, and then I'm going to run home, as I said, because I need to hurry up and get to sleep before I have to be right back here to fill in for Bill Handel, who's having a whole lot more fun than all of us in Italy getting married. Congratulations on the nuptials, Bill. Hurry back, because I'm not trying to do your show all that often. I do not like getting up in the morning. But all that is coming up next. It is Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We are going to come back with the Metro news update. A man who was stabbed by another passenger on a Metro platform. That's next.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And there's an old saying, I can show you better than I can tell you, which basically means when there is something that we both can see or both can point to, it makes the point much easier to understand, as opposed to me just trying to explain it to you in an abstract sense. A couple of days ago, we talked about Mayor Bass and the reduction of crime, at least as far as the stats went. And I was making the point generally that Safety is a feeling. It is an internal response or belief about your immediate surroundings. And no numbers, no statistics will really change that. I was being flippant and I was making comparisons saying like, yeah, I'm going to walk outside of my house and say, hey, crime is down 10%. I feel 10% safer. No one really actually feels that way. The numbers don't really mean anything. The only thing that means anything is what you feel about your immediate surroundings. And I also said that crime stats are indicators of the past. They're not predictors of the future. So now I'm going to point because I can show you better than I can tell you. I'm positive that virtually nobody got on the metro yesterday explicitly thinking that they were inherently safer or even somewhat safer just because crime, quote unquote, was down in the city of Los Angeles. Let me digress real quick. And I also made the point that just because crime is down in the city of Los Angeles, it doesn't mean that crime everywhere else is also down or crime doesn't traverse boundaries. Tell you about this metro stabbing last night, and it kind of makes the point for me. LAPD. They're searching for a man who they say stabbed another passenger. Passenger stabbed another passenger on a metro platform in Universal City Tuesday night. And from what we know, the stabbing happened around 9 p.m. Paramedics took the victim to the hospital in stable condition. They're still looking for the assailant. There has been no description which has been published. No detailed description. I don't know whether they're going to find the person. And honestly, this is not another rant about the failings of metro security or how it's inherently unsafe. I've done that plenty of times. You know where I stand on that. But this does highlight that just because we receive some good news about a portion of greater metro Los Angeles, it doesn't mean that you or me or Tawala or Steph, welcome back, Steph, or even Mark Ronner would necessarily feel any better or considerably safer just because some crime stats were down. It has to do with our personal experiences. It has to do with our day-to-day travels. I am fortunate enough to always be able to drive to work. And because I do drive to work and my car is dependable, there is a 0.00001 chance of actually getting stabbed going to or coming from work. But that's not true of everyone else. There are a lot of people who have no other form of transportation with the exception of taking the metro. And because they have to take the metro, there are some inherent risks that come with taking the metro. It could be on a platform. It could be on a train, as we saw here, where it was a passenger to passenger stabbing. We don't know if one person knew another. We don't know if there was a precipitating argument or factor which contributed to why the stabbing took place. It could happen on a platform. It could happen on a train. It could happen on a bus. It could happen any number of places. And there are far too many people who unfortunately don't have the luxury of being able to drive to and from work. So they have to take the metro. So their concept of safety or lack thereof is fundamentally different than yours or mine, because we have a somewhat controlled environment being in our cars. We don't necessarily have to worry about the passenger in our car. And I'm not trying to sound flippant, but I'm saying this is how the concept of safety is so very different depending on where you live. We don't have to worry about the person sitting next to us, or at least I hope we don't have to worry about the person sitting next to us actually stabbing us. Now imagine how distant those crime stats may feel. And even though the crime stats only had to do with LA City, and this happening in Universal City is not within the purview of Mayor Karen Bass. It is fair to highlight those facts. In other words, one has nothing to do with the other. But my larger point still stands that just because we have some improving crime statistics, it doesn't necessarily change our concept of safety or whether we are safe in this city. Crime doesn't respect boundaries of a particular city or county. And also, our lives have not changed just because a report about some crime stats had come out. And we had heard from Metro, getting back to Metro specifically, we had heard from Metro that Metro was somehow fundamentally more safe. They even talked about this particular station had a drop in crime. I remember Twal and I had talked about it. In fact, they were touting it. They sent out this release they gave to Michael Monks that Michael Monks had even talked about on the air with us because they keep ducking me. As if Metro was considerably more safe, especially when it related to this station. Hello? Same place, unfortunately, same result. But the whole idea of crime has not changed. My concept of my own safety has not changed, and I don't even ride the Metro. This, going back to Karen Bass, Mayor Bass, is where I think she missed the mark. And I received some notes from you on Facebook at Mr. Mo Kelly on Facebook and on Instagram at Mr. Mo Kelly and at Later with Mo Kelly. And you were somewhat critical of me. You're saying, Mo, you're too hard on the mayor. You're nitpicking. You're looking for things to be critical of. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. I can be hypercritical. I'm not pushing that aside. But I do think there is a disconnect between what Mayor Bass is trying to convey and understanding our realities of our day-to-day insecurities and our general sense of lack of safety. When we come back, we got to talk about Rick Caruso, who I think is all but announced that he's running for mayor. He has taken a different tact, and I think this is a good way to pick up with Mayor Bass on the other side of this conversation, because Rick Caruso has come out and said that he is against the recall effort regarding Mayor Karen Bass. Say what? Yes, he said exactly that, and we have the audio to prove it.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And I'm real big on strategy. I'm real big on seeing the bigger picture. I talked about that with Governor Gavin Newsom and his podcast. Even though it may not be popular with Democrats right now, I understand the long-term strategy. Sometimes you do things right now which may be uncomfortable for your base, but it will pay off dividends down the road. That was Gavin Newsom and his podcast. And if you're paying attention right now, you can see the long-term strategy of Rick Caruso, who clearly is running for mayor again, even though he hasn't officially declared it. A few weeks ago, we talked about how Rick Caruso had set aside money and contacts in this effort to help rebuild portions of Los Angeles. That was a genius move. Not saying it was insincere. I'm saying it was genius because it keeps his name in the press for something very positive, and it can be seen in stark contrast to Karen Bass and her supposed mishandling of the fires and the relief effort. It was brilliant. And now I see what I consider to be another brilliant move. Sometimes you have to look beyond your own politics to see what these individuals are doing long term. Rick Caruso has come out, get this, against the recall effort regarding Karen Bass. You heard that correctly. He's come out against the recall effort.
If you're going to do a recall now, what's going to happen is the city is going to end up spending $25 to $30 million, which it doesn't have because we've already been told that the city's broke. And then it's going to take 8 to 10 months, and it's going to run up to the June primary. And people in June are going to have an opportunity to vote for or against the mayor. And so why do it now? And I think it's a waste of money, waste of resources. And one last thing. We've got so many things the mayor needs to deal with in this city and deal with it well with a lot of focus. Rebuilding in the Palisades. We still have a major homeless problem. All of these kind of things. The crime, it's going to be a diversion to her and her team. And we don't need her attention diverted right now.
He's right. Now, you may not like Mayor Karen Bass, and there are a lot of people who do not like her or her leadership. But what Rick Caruso was doing is saying, hey, I am going to be above the fray. Or at least right now, he's presenting himself as someone who is above the fray. He's looking at the bigger picture. He's reading the room, as they say. We just went through fires. We just went through mudslides. LA is in a very precarious place emotionally. And a recall effort seemingly puts politics above the people. And Rick Caruso is saying, no, I'm thinking first and foremost about the people and not even talking about politics. And what does that afford him? Big picture, long term. It presents him in a way where people can look at him beyond the politics of the moment. It looks like he wants to be seen as someone who is about the people more than anything, and the politics will come later. And if anything, that for a lot of people, including me, is a breath of fresh air. Not everything needs to be about politics. Well, wait. Don't get me wrong. This is about politics to some degree. Yes, Rick Caruso is doing this, being mindful of a future mayoral election that he hasn't officially thrown his hat in, but we all know he's running for mayor. But there's a way that you can do it which doesn't make it seem so politically self-serving in every way. And he also knows that since LA is a Democratic town through and through, the recall effort, as I've already talked about on a number of occasions, is likely going to fail. It's likely not going to go anywhere. It's definitely going to be very expensive and unnecessary, given that we know most likely how it's going to turn out, that it's not going to be successful. So why even waste the money? That is a pragmatic, that is a practical, that is a sensible approach to where we are right now in the city of Los Angeles and also Los Angeles County. Even though we're talking about the mayoral race, it's still inclusive of the people like me who live in the city of Los Angeles, but it's unincorporated. Meaning I don't get to vote for mayor. I don't get to vote for a city council person. So I am on the periphery, but I'm still invested in the discussion. What happens in the city of LA, and my address is the city of LA, even though I don't get to vote for mayor or city council, but what happens within the city does impact me, does affect me. Whatever happens in city affects the county. And Rick Caruso is trying to maneuver and navigate and make his way through that while also building coalitions, strengthening constituencies. He's doing everything right. It doesn't mean that you have to like his politics. It doesn't mean that at all. He is, in a very shrewd way, positioning himself where he can be seen as a breath of fresh air. Let me put it that way. It's not politics as usual, or at least what we've seen for the past few years. It's not taking every opportunity to score a political point in that moment to kick that proverbial political football down the field. He's doing something different. It's like, hey, you know, and I'm pretending I'm Rick Caruso. Hey, you know that I'm not a fan of Karen Bass. I've been very vocal in my criticism of Mayor Bass and how she handled the fires. But you know what? I'm thinking first and foremost about Los Angeles, the city, and the people who reside within it. A recall effort, not only is it going to be expensive, let's be honest, it's going to fail. And LA is not better because of that recall effort. We have elections, and an election, and he hasn't said this, but I'm just trying to get in his head right now. We have elections, and elections are the best way to send the message that LA needs, wants, or deserves new leadership. Although you may not like Governor Gavin Newsom, I'm saying I see the strategy. It's a bold strategy, but I understand what he's trying to do, and it's a long-term approach. The exact same is happening here with Rick Caruso. The knee-jerk response is to say, wait a minute. Why is Rick Caruso against the idea of a recall effort against his would-be competition and reigning incumbent? That's the knee-jerk response. But if you slow down and look at the bigger picture, like Rick Caruso obviously is, and putting people above politics and showing that there is a different way to lead, long term, it puts him in a very good position. I'm not saying that he's going to be then the next mayor of Los Angeles. I'm saying he has undoubtedly helped his cause. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And I don't know how often I talk about it, but I do mention it from time to time that I'm not really a fan of roller coasters anymore. That time of my life is well behind me. Maybe I have a healthy sense of fear when it comes to things moving very fast outside of my control. And when we tell you or remind you about the Garden Grove family who has been very upset about the Six Flags roller coaster, which they say caused their son's death, then you'll probably know where I'm coming from, because that same family is now suing Six Flags. We'll tell you about it next.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And I've said over the years that I'm not real big on roller coasters anymore. Love amusement parks, but I'm saying just riding the roller coasters themselves, I leave that to the young folks. I joke about how I may go to sleep and then wake up with a sprained ankle. That's real. And imagine all the G-forces on these roller coasters flipping and spinning and bumping you around. Yeah, I don't need that anymore. I've never been a thrill seeker. The whole idea of having my stomach come up into my throat hasn't been appealing. So I would say around the age of 40, I lost most of my desire to ride any of these roller coasters, especially the new ones. I mention that because a Garden Grove couple, Ann and William Hawley, have filed a lawsuit against Magic Mountain, claiming the X2 roller coaster caused a fatal brain injury to their son, Christopher, 22-year-old recent graduate of San Diego State University back in 2022, June 23rd of 2022, exactly. According to the lawsuit, when Christopher was riding the roller coaster with his brother and cousin, the ride abruptly stopped, causing Christopher to experience severe head pain, and he eventually lost consciousness. The lawsuit also alleges negligence, design defects, failure to warn customers of potential dangers associated with the ride. The family's attorney, Ari Friedman, said, quote, "This is not the first time someone has sustained a serious injury as a result of riding X2. X2 has been linked to previous incidents where people receive whiplash, head and leg injuries, and more from the ride's sudden shuddering and jolts," close quote. The whiplash part I could absolutely see. And for me, someone who's not 22 years old, it probably would have more of an adverse effect on me or someone like me. So I completely get that. As far as the X2 roller coaster is concerned, it has rotating seats, a 215-foot drop, and speeds up to 76 miles an hour. And the ride is obviously known for its sudden flips and rotations. The Hawley's lawsuit highlights previous incidents, as I said, and this is how X2 is described per Magic Mountain itself. Quote, "Go ahead and take in the view on the long ride up 200 feet in the air. Enjoy the ride of your life on this one-of-a-kind coaster with a groundbreaking use of fire, carefully designed to heighten your total sensory overload. X2's utterly innovative design will keep your mind in full thrust the entire time. Your 360-degree seats extend on wings far off the track. So while you are careening down the rails at 76 miles per hour through an unreal assortment of dives, flips, and twists, as well as two ultra-rare Raven turns, half loops that change their minds midway and become sheer drops, your body also will be flipping around 360 degrees over and over again. Quite simply, you will be spun into another dimension," close quote.
Brave 5 dimensions of fear on the all-new X2. Now at Six Flags Magic Mountain. For a limited time, pay just $26.99.
Now, I'm not a lawyer, but that's not exactly supporting Magic Mountain's side of it. If anything, it lends more credence and evidence, if you will, to the Hawley's lawsuit as far as what they allege and what it puts a body through regardless of age. Magic Mountain hasn't commented, of course, on this lawsuit. They're not going to comment on existing litigation, but I understand how this could have happened. And it doesn't mean that Magic Mountain is at fault. I can't speak to whether there was any type of autopsy which determined or somehow linked the roller coaster to the young man's death. We don't know if there was a pre-existing condition or situation which might have impacted why he passed on this day. But I'm actually surprised that there aren't more types of physical injuries and incidents. Maybe there are, and they're just not reported or they're settled out of court. But given the velocity of the ride, how roller coasters have become increasingly, I wouldn't say dangerous, but increasingly daring, the turns are much more severe and the drops are much more steep because they're always out trying to outdo the last roller coaster. I'm not surprised that I'm actually more surprised that we don't hear more about these types of incidents. And look, I know that nothing is foolproof, and I'm not saying that we need to nerf the world and we need to put some foam padding around everything to make sure nothing bad happens to anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances. But I do know I've always had my mental reservations about some of these roller coasters because the speed is real. The drops are real. The sudden turns, they are real. The sudden jolts and stops, they are real. The G-forces are real, and the effects on our bodies are absolutely real. Now, we may, in a general sense, love the thrills of the ride. We may love the turns and how it may scare us to a certain degree. But there is a real conversation to be had about how safe they are, as we always talk about safety, as we always talk about the things that we should go into eyes wide open. Now, there probably will never be any public acknowledgement of any settlement made. Situations like these never lead to public disclosure. We'll never know. It'll probably just quietly go away and be settled. But it will begin the conversation in earnest if there are more incidents like these, which are covered in the media, and we find that this is one incident of possibly many or others which are similar, which could possibly change the direction of the future of roller coasters as we know them. It's Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.